"You're just food for my dragons," laughed the Emperor, until they started bringing her their gold. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The grand throne room of Emperor Vexus fell silent as the Imperial Guards dragged in their latest captive. Chains rattled against the polished obsidian floor, echoing through the cavernous chamber that smelled of incense and fear. The human woman stumbled forward, her auburn hair matted with dirt and blood, but her green eyes blazed with defiance. Despite the bruises marking her face, she stood tall before the Emperor, refusing to kneel even as the guards tried to force her down. Emperor Vexus leaned forward on his crystalline throne, his 7-foot frame draped in shimmering robes that caught the light from 100 floating orbs. The pale blue skin of his elongated face creased into what passed for a smile among the Azurian race. His eyes, metallic pools of silver, studied the human like she was an insect that had crawled onto his banquet table. "So this is the infamous saboteur," he said, his voice a melodious rumble that belied his cruelty. "The one who destroyed 3 of my mining facilities and freed 200 slaves." He tilted his head, the jeweled crown upon it catching the light. "You don't look like much." "And you look exactly like I expected," the woman replied, earning a strike across her shoulders from the nearest guard. She barely flinched. The Emperor's laughter filled the throne room, a sound like crystal bells in a storm. "They told me humans were amusing. I see they were right." He rose from his throne, towering over everyone in the room as he descended the 7 steps toward her. "Do you know what happens to those who defy the Azurian Empire, human?" "Let me guess," she said, something tediously unoriginal. The Emperor circled her slowly. "What is your name, little rebel?" "Emily Parker." "Well, Emily Parker of Earth," he said, stopping directly before her. "You are just food for my dragons." The assembled court erupted in laughter, the sound bouncing off the vaulted ceiling decorated with murals depicting Azurian conquest across a dozen worlds. Emily's expression remained unchanged. "If that's the most creative punishment you can devise, I understand why your empire is crumbling at the edges," she said. The Emperor's smile vanished. "Take her to the dragon pits," he commanded. "I will attend the feeding personally tomorrow at dawn." As the guards dragged her away, Emily caught sight of something unexpected, a flash of concern on the face of an Azurian noble standing near the throne. The female Azurian quickly looked away, but that momentary connection lingered in Emily's mind as she was hauled through the palace's winding corridors. The dragon pits lay beneath the Imperial Palace, vast caverns carved from the living rock of Mount Draconis. The guards threw Emily into a holding cell adjacent to the main pit, a chamber with one wall made entirely of transparent force field material that offered a clear view of her intended fate. In the dim bioluminescent light, she could see them, the Emperor's dragons. Unlike the dragons of Earth mythology, these creatures were sleek and serpentine, with 6 limbs and no wings. Their scales shimmered with iridescent colors that shifted as they moved, creating a hypnotic display of light. There were 5 of them, each the size of a city bus, their long bodies coiled around stone outcroppings or submerged in pools of bubbling liquid. Emily sank to the floor, her back against the cold stone wall. The dragons paid her no attention, seemingly unaware of her presence beyond the force field. She examined her restraints, sophisticated electronic cuffs that would require a key code to unlock. "So much for the quick escape plan," she muttered to herself. Night fell, though it was hard to tell underground. The bioluminescent fungi dimmed slightly, creating an illusion of nighttime. Emily dozed fitfully, haunted by memories of how she'd ended up here. 6 months ago, she'd been just another mining engineer contracted by Interstellar Resources to help set up operations on newly discovered planets. When she'd discovered that ISR was using slave labor from conquered worlds on their remote operations, she'd reported it to her superiors. They'd thanked her for her concern, then attempted to silence her permanently. That hadn't gone well for them. One thing led to another, and soon Emily found herself allied with the resistance. a loose coalition of species fighting against Azurian expansion. Her knowledge of mining operations made her valuable for sabotage missions. She'd been successful until a routine operation went sideways, leading to her capture. A soft scraping sound pulled Emily from her thoughts. On the other side of the force field, one of the dragons had approached, a midnight blue creature with eyes like molten gold. It studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Hello there," Emily said softly, not expecting a response. The dragon tilted its head, remarkably bird-like in its movements despite its massive size. Then, to Emily's shock, it extended a foreclaw and touched the force field. The barrier rippled but held firm. "You understand me, don't you?" Emily whispered. The dragon blinked slowly, then turned away, slithering back into the depths of the pit. Emily watched it go, a plan beginning to form in her mind. If the dragons were intelligent enough to understand speech, perhaps there was more to them than the Azurians realized. But first, she needed to survive until morning. Dawn came with the brightening of the bioluminescent fungi and the arrival of her guards, for Azurians in ceremonial armor. They deactivated the force field and hauled Emily to her feet. "The Emperor awaits," one of them said, shoving her forward. They led her to a viewing platform overlooking the main pit. Emperor Vexus was already there, dressed in ceremonial attire even more elaborate than the previous day. Around him stood a dozen nobles, including the female Azurian who had shown a flicker of concern yesterday. "Emily Parker," the Emperor announced. "Your execution will serve as a reminder that no one defies the Azurian Empire without consequences." Emily met his gaze steadily. "And here I thought we were going to have breakfast first." Several nobles tittered nervously, but the Emperor's expression darkened. "Your species' tendency toward inappropriate humor in the face of death is not as charming as you seem to think." He gestured to the guards, who led Emily to a circular platform extending out over the pit. They removed her restraints, then quickly retreated, leaving her alone on the platform. "Release the barrier," the Emperor commanded. A technician pressed a sequence of controls, and Emily felt a change in the air as the invisible force field separating her from the dragons disappeared. The platform began to lower slowly into the pit. "Goodbye, Emily Parker," the Emperor called down. "You're just food for my dragons now." Emily stood perfectly still as the platform descended, her mind racing. The dragons had begun to gather below, their sinuous bodies converging beneath her. The midnight blue one that had studied her the night before was at the front, its golden eyes fixed upon her. As the platform reached the bottom of the pit and locked into place, Emily took a deep breath. The dragons approached cautiously, their movements deliberate and synchronized in a way that struck Emily as almost ceremonial. "I know you're intelligent," she said quietly, addressing the blue dragon. "I know you understand." The dragon moved closer, its massive head now just feet away from her. Emily could feel the heat radiating from its body, could smell the strange metallic scent of its breath. Above, the Emperor and his court watched in anticipation, their voices a distant murmur. "They use you as weapons, don't they?" Emily continued, maintaining eye contact with the creature. "They think you're just animals." The blue dragon's pupils dilated, and then, to Emily's astonishment, it lowered its head in what could only be described as a bow. The other dragons followed suit, creating a circle of bowed heads around her. Confused murmurs erupted from the viewing platform above. "What trickery is this?" the Emperor demanded, his voice echoing through the pit. Emily remained focused on the dragons. "My name is Emily Parker," she said clearly. "I am not your enemy." The blue dragon raised its head and made a sound, a low, melodious rumble that reverberated through Emily's bones. Then, in a movement so swift Emily could barely track it, the dragon turned and slithered to the far side of the pit, disappearing into a tunnel. The remaining dragons maintained their positions, forming a protective circle around Emily. Above, the Emperor was shouting orders, and guards were rushing about in confusion. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then the blue dragon returned, carrying something in its mouth. It approached Emily and carefully deposited its burden at her feet. Emily gasped. It was a chunk of gold the size of her head, raw and unrefined, but unmistakably valuable. "By the 7 moons," whispered a noble from above. The other dragons began to move as well, each disappearing into various tunnels only to return with their own offerings, more gold, gemstones, and strange crystalline objects that pulsed with inner light. Emperor Vexus stood frozen, his silver eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," he breathed. The female noble who had shown concern stepped forward. "My emperor, the legends may be true after all." "What legends?" he snapped, not taking his eyes off the scene below. "The ancient texts speak of the dragon's ability to recognize soul kin, beings with whom they share a spiritual connection. It was believed to be merely mythology." Emily stood amid a growing pile of treasure, the dragons continuing to bring more with each passing minute. The blue dragon returned again, this time with something different, a small metallic object that looked artificial rather than natural. When Emily picked it up, she realized it was a key of some sort, intricately designed with symbols she didn't recognize. The dragon watched her expectantly. "What is happening?" the emperor demanded, his voice rising with anger and confusion. "Guards, retrieve the human." Several guards moved to obey, but the female noble stopped them. "My emperor, I advise caution. The dragons have claimed her as soulkin. To interfere could provoke them. They are beasts." "They do not claim anything," the emperor shouted, but there was uncertainty in his voice. Below, Emily examined the key in her hand, turning it over carefully. The blue dragon made another rumbling sound, then gently nudged her toward the tunnel from which it had emerged. "I think it wants me to follow." Emily called up to the viewing platform, making sure her voice carried to the emperor. "You will remain where you are," Vexus commanded. Emily looked at the dragons surrounding her, then back at the emperor. "I don't think that's your decision to make anymore." Before anyone could respond, the blue dragon moved between Emily and the viewing platform, its massive body serving as a shield. The other dragons followed suit, creating a wall of scales and muscle that obscured her from view. Under this cover, Emily followed the blue dragon into the tunnel, the strange key clutched tightly in her hand. The tunnel sloped gently downward, illuminated by the same bioluminescent fungi that lit the pit. As they walked, Emily noticed intricate carvings on the walls, depictions of dragons and humanoid figures working together, building what appeared to be cities and spacecraft. "These are your ancestors, aren't they?" Emily asked, running her fingers over a carving of a dragon and a humanoid figure standing side by side beneath twin suns. The dragon made a soft, affirmative sound. They continued deeper, the tunnel eventually opening into a vast underground chamber that took Emily's breath away. Unlike the rough-hewn dragon pit above, this space was clearly artificial, a perfect dome with a floor of polished black stone. In the center stood a pedestal with a keyhole that matched the design of the key in Emily's hand. The blue dragon nudged her forward gently. "You want me to use this key?" Emily realized. "But what does it open?" The dragon's only response was another gentle nudge. Emily approached the pedestal cautiously. The chamber was eerily silent except for the soft padding of the dragon's feet behind her. When she reached the pedestal, she examined it closely. The keyhole was surrounded by symbols similar to those on the key itself, flowing lines and geometric patterns that seemed to tell a story she couldn't quite understand. With a deep breath, Emily inserted the key into the hole and turned it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a soft hum filled the chamber, and lines of blue light spread from the pedestal across the floor in a complex pattern. The dome above began to glow, revealing that what Emily had taken for solid rock was actually a projection screen of some kind. It flickered to life, displaying an image of stars and planets. A voice spoke, not in any language Emily recognized, yet somehow she understood it perfectly. Activation protocol initiated. Genetic signature recognized. "Welcome, Kindrith." "Kindrith," Emily repeated, confused. The blue dragon made a sound that Emily could have sworn was laughter. The voice continued. This installation has been dormant for 5,000 cycles. Status of Draconis Human Alliance unknown. Request update. Emily looked at the dragon, who was watching her expectantly. I think it wants me to answer, she said. But I don't know what to say. There is no alliance that I know of. The dragon lowered its head, touching its snout to Emily's forehead. In that moment, images flooded her mind, memories that weren't her own. She saw a civilization where humans and dragons lived and worked together as equals. She saw massive ships traveling between stars, settlements on distant worlds, and technologies beyond anything humanity currently possessed. Then she saw destruction, an attack by the ancestors of the Azurians, a desperate flight, and a decision to hide and wait for the right time to return. When the dragon pulled away, Emily gasped, staggering slightly from the intensity of the shared memories. The alliance was broken, she said to the installation. The Azurians attacked and drove our peoples apart. The dragons have been enslaved for thousands of years. The chamber hummed with energy. Contingency protocols activated. Defense systems online. Restoration sequence initiated. The floor beneath Emily's feet began to shift, sections sliding away to reveal compartments containing what looked like technology, sleek devices with the same flowing design aesthetic as the key and pedestal. What is all this? Emily asked the dragon. In response, the installation's voice spoke again. The Draconis cache contains the combined knowledge and technology of the Alliance at the time of separation. It was hidden to prevent capture by enemy forces and programmed to activate only when a compatible human and Draconis were present simultaneously. Emily picked up one of the devices, a bracelet-like object that seemed to pulse with inner light. And what does it do? That is a neural interface designed to facilitate direct communication between humans and Draconis, the voice explained. It translates thought patterns into comprehensible form for both species. Emily looked at the blue dragon. May I? The dragon dipped its head in what was clearly affirmation. Emily slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. It adjusted automatically, contracting to fit snugly against her skin. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a wave of sensation washed over her, followed by a voice in her mind, not heard with her ears, but directly in her thoughts. Finally, we can truly speak, Emily Parker. Emily gasped, nearly dropping the other device she'd been holding. You're in my head. The interface allows thought transfer, the dragon explained. My name is Seraphine, first guardian of the Draconis cache. Seraphine, Emily repeated. It's beautiful. Thank you. We have waited many generations for one like you to come. The Azurians believe they conquered us, but in truth, we were waiting. Waiting for what? For the return of the Kindrith, humans with the genetic marker that allows true communication with Draconis. Our ancestors fled in different directions when the Azurians attacked. Humans went to distant stars while we remained, hidden in plain sight, pretending to be mindless beasts that could be tamed. Emily's mind reeled with the implications. But why me? Why now? The genetic marker is rare, becoming rarer with each generation of isolation. You are the first compatible human to come within range of our sensing abilities in over 500 years. A commotion from the tunnel entrance interrupted them. Emperor Vexus's voice echoed down the passage, accompanied by the heavy footfalls of guards. Find her. Bring her back alive. I want to know what power she holds over the dragons. Seraphine's thoughts darkened. The Emperor comes. He must not discover the cache. Emily looked around frantically. What do we do? Take what you can carry, Seraphine instructed. The other guardians will delay them. We must reach the ancient hangar. Hangar? As in spacecraft. Yes. The final refuge plan has always been evacuation if discovery was imminent. Emily quickly gathered several devices from the revealed compartments, guided by Seraphine's thoughts on which were most important. The neural interface allowed Seraphine to share knowledge directly, showing Emily how to activate and use some of the technology. One device, a small disc that attached to her palm, created a force field around her body. Another, shaped like a pen, was actually a weapon capable of emitting a concentrated energy beam. "Ready," Emily said, securing the last device in her pocket. Seraphine led her toward the back of the chamber, where a section of wall slid aside to reveal another tunnel. This one was perfectly cylindrical and lined with metallic panels that lit up as they approached. "This transport tube will take us to the hangar," Seraphine explained. It was built beneath the mountain, hidden from sensors by natural deposits of gravitite ore. They entered the tube, and a platform materialized beneath them. As soon as they were fully inside, the platform began to move, accelerating rapidly along the tunnel. Behind them, they could hear shouts and the sound of weapons being discharged. "The other Guardians," Emily said anxiously. "They know their duty," Seraphine replied, though Emily could sense her concern. "They will join us if they can." The journey through the transport tube took less than a minute. When they emerged, Emily found herself in a space so vast it defied belief. A cavern large enough to house a small city, illuminated by the same bioluminescent light sources as the pit above, but on a much grander scale. And there, dominating the center of the cavern, was a ship. It didn't look like any spacecraft Emily had ever seen. Instead of the utilitarian design of human vessels or the crystalline aesthetics of Azurian craft, this ship was organic in appearance, as if it had been grown rather than built. Its hull resembled the scales of a dragon, iridescent and flowing, with no visible seams or joints. "The Star Song," Seraphine said, a note of reverence in her mental voice. "Last flagship of the Alliance fleet, preserved here for the day of return." "It's beautiful," Emily breathed. They approached the ship, which seemed to sense their presence. A section of the hull rippled and parted, creating an entrance large enough for Seraphine to pass through comfortably. Inside, the ship was even more remarkable. The interior spaces adjusted as they moved through them, corridors expanding to accommodate Seraphine's bulk and control interfaces rising from the floor at the perfect height for Emily to access. "The ship is semi-sentient," Seraphine explained. "It bonds with its crew, adapting to their needs and preferences." They reached what appeared to be the bridge, a circular chamber with a transparent dome showing the cavern above. Control stations surrounded a central platform where Seraphine settled herself, while Emily took position at what was clearly the main interface. "How do I operate it?" Emily asked. "The neural interface will guide you. The ship responds to thought commands from authorized users. As Kindrith, you have full access." Emily placed her hands on the smooth surface before her, and information flooded her mind: status reports, navigation data, weapon systems. It was overwhelming at first, but the neural interface helped her process the information, categorizing and prioritizing it automatically. "The ship is fully functional," she reported with amazement. "Power systems at 92% despite being dormant for thousands of years. Draconis technology is self-maintaining," Seraphine explained. "Now we must." A tremendous explosion rocked the cavern, sending dust and debris raining down from above. "They found the hangar entrance," Seraphine said urgently. "We must launch immediately." "But how do we get out?" Emily asked, looking up at the solid rock ceiling of the cavern. In answer, the ship's systems highlighted a section of the cavern wall. "The original entrance is sealed, but the emergency exit remains functional. It leads to a tunnel that emerges on the far side of the mountain, away from the Imperial City." Emily initiated the launch sequence with a thought. The ship hummed to life, lifting gently from its resting place. At that moment, the other 4 dragons burst into the hangar, pursued by Emperor Vexus and a squadron of guards armed with energy weapons. The Emperor froze at the sight of the ship hovering above the ground, his silver eyes widening in shock. "Impossible," he whispered. "The other Guardians," Emily exclaimed. "We have to wait for them." "Open the ventral bay," Seraphine instructed. Emily complied, and a section of the ship's underside opened like a blooming flower. The 4 dragons raced toward it, dodging energy blasts from the guards' weapons. "Fire at will," the Emperor commanded, his voice echoing through the cavern. "Do not let them escape." Energy bolts struck the ship's hull, but dissipated harmlessly against its shields. The 4 dragons leaped into the open bay one after another, safely entering the ship. Emily began to close the bay doors, but Seraphine stopped her. Wait, there is one more coming. Through the view screen, Emily saw the female Azurian noble who had shown concern earlier racing across the hangar floor, pursued by guards. She was clutching something to her chest, a small box that seemed important given the risks she was taking. She helped us, Seraphine explained quickly. She is the one who ensured you were brought to the pit instead of being executed immediately. She has been our secret ally for years. Lower the ship, Emily commanded. We'll pick her up. The Starsong descended just enough for the Azurian woman to reach the open bay. She leaped inside, and Emily immediately closed the doors and directed the ship toward the exit tunnel. Emperor Vexus's rage was visible even from a distance. He aimed his personal weapon at the ship and fired repeatedly, each blast more powerful than those of his guards, but still ineffective against the ancient shields. This isn't over, human, his voice boomed through a command amplifier. I will hunt you across the stars. Emily directed the ship into the exit tunnel, which was barely large enough to accommodate it. The passage twisted and turned, following the natural contours of the mountain. The tunnel emerges in 300 meters, Seraphine informed her. Prepare for atmospheric flight. Emily accessed the flight systems, familiarizing herself with the controls through the neural interface. Despite never having piloted anything more complex than a mining shuttle, she found she could understand the ship's operations intuitively. The tunnel ended abruptly, and they burst out into open air on the far side of Mount Draconis, away from the Imperial City. Below them spread a vast forest, and beyond that, the glittering expanse of an ocean. We're out, Emily exclaimed. Where to now? Up, Seraphine replied simply. To the stars. The Empire will send pursuit craft as soon as they realize what has happened. Emily directed the ship upward, accelerating through the atmosphere. The Starsong responded beautifully, moving with a grace that belied its size. As they climbed higher, Emily finally had a moment to process everything that had happened. In less than a day, she had gone from condemned prisoner to pilot of an ancient alien spacecraft, allied with dragons against an interstellar empire. I still don't understand why the dragons were bringing me gold, she said to Seraphine. The dragon's mental laughter rippled through her mind. An old tradition. When a guardian recognizes a kindred, they offer treasures as a sign of respect and alliance. We knew you were special the moment you entered the pit. Your genetic signature called to us, and the Emperor never realized what you really were. The Azurians see what they expect to see. They believed us to be powerful but mindless creatures that could be controlled through conditioning and force. We allowed them to believe this while we waited and watched for a kindred to return. The ship broke through the upper atmosphere into the silence of space. Behind them, the blue-green world of Azuria Prime grew smaller. Sensors detect pursuit craft launching, reported one of the other dragons through the neural interface. Imperial cruisers moving to intercept. Can we outrun them? Emily asked. Better, Seraphine replied. We can outjump them. Through the interface, Seraphine showed Emily how to activate the ship's jump drive, a technology far beyond anything used by either humans or Azurians. Unlike conventional FTL drives that required complex calculations and specific jump points, the Starsong could create its own passage through space-time. Where should we go? Emily asked. Earth, Seraphine suggested. Your homeworld. The time has come to reforge the ancient alliance. Emily entered the coordinates for the Sol system, and the jump drive began to power up. Outside, the Imperial ships were closing rapidly, but they were still minutes away from weapons range. Jump drive at full power, Emily announced. Initiating jump in 3, 2, 1. The stars around them stretched into lines of light, and then reality itself seemed to fold. The Starsong slipped between the folds, vanishing from Azurian space. Emperor Vexus stood in his throne room, rage radiating from him like heat from a furnace. Before him cowered his chief science advisor, a thin Azurian who couldn't stop trembling. Explain it again, the Emperor demanded, his voice dangerously quiet. The dragons appear to have been harboring advanced technology, Your Eminence, the scientist stammered. Our preliminary investigation of the underground chambers suggests they are not merely animals as we believed, but a sentient species with technological capabilities exceeding our own. And the human? What made her special? We are still analyzing the data, but there appears to be a genetic component. Something in her DNA resonated with the dragons. The Emperor turned to stare out the vast windows overlooking his capital city. Find her, he commanded. I want that ship. I want that technology. And I want that human's head. Yes, Your Eminence. We are tracking the energy signature of their jump. We should have a destination soon. Good. The Emperor's silver eyes narrowed. Prepare the fleet. We go to war. Meanwhile, aboard the Star Song, Emily sat on the bridge, surrounded by her new dragon allies. The Azurian noble, who had introduced herself as Lyra, sat nearby, still clutching the mysterious box. What's in there? Emily asked, gesturing to the box. Lyra opened it carefully, revealing a crystal sphere that pulsed with inner light. The control key for the Imperial Defense Network, she said. Without it, the Emperor's military capabilities are reduced by half. Emily's eyes widened. You're not just an ally. You're a saboteur. Lyra inclined her head. I am a descendant of those who opposed the original war against the Alliance. My family has preserved the truth for generations, waiting for this moment. And now? Emily asked, looking from Lyra to Seraphine. Now, Seraphine replied, we awaken the rest of my kind. There are dragon enclaves hidden throughout the Empire, guardians protecting caches of technology and knowledge, waiting for the signal to rise. And with the defense key, Lyra added, we can ensure they have time to mobilize before the Emperor can respond effectively. Emily leaned back in her control seat, trying to absorb the enormity of what was happening. So I'm not just a random mining engineer who got caught up in something bigger than herself. I'm some kind of, what did you call it? Kindred, with special DNA that lets me talk to dragons. And now we're going to start a revolution against the most powerful empire in known space. Seraphine's mental voice was warm with amusement. That summarizes our situation quite accurately. Emily laughed, the sound echoing through the bridge. And here the Emperor thought I was just food for his dragons. A rather significant miscalculation on his part, Lyra observed dryly. Indeed, Seraphine agreed. For it is not humans who shall feed dragons, but together we shall feed on the ashes of the Emperor's ambition. The Star Song continued its journey through the fold space, carrying with it the seed of revolution and the rebirth of an alliance that would soon shake the foundations of an empire. The journey to Earth took 3 days in fold space, though Emily experienced it as mere hours. The Star Song's technology allowed her to send a message ahead to her resistance contacts, warning them of their arrival and the revelations she carried. Do you think they'll believe you? Lyra asked, her elongated blue fingers tapping nervously on the control panel. The Azurian noble had adapted quickly to life aboard the ship, proving herself knowledgeable about Imperial tactics and technology. Emily shrugged. Probably not at first, but they will when they see all of you. Seraphine, coiled comfortably in the center of the bridge, projected amusement through their neural link. Humans have always been skeptical creatures. It is part of why our ancestors allied with yours. You question everything, even the evidence of your own senses. Speaking of questions, Emily said, turning to face the massive blue dragon, I still don't understand why the Emperor kept you in those pits if you're so dangerous. Why not just kill you? Prestige, Lyra answered before Seraphine could. The Imperial bloodline has controlled dragons for generations. It's a symbol of their divine right to rule. Besides, the dragons are incredibly resistant to damage. Killing one would require resources better spent elsewhere. We also ensured our apparent docility, added Seraphine. Any dragon who showed too much intelligence was hidden away, replaced by younger ones who hadn't yet learned to conceal their nature. The ship's alert system chimed softly, drawing their attention to the main view screen. The fold space effect was dissipating, reality reshaping itself around them as they approached their destination. Emerging in the Sol system, Emily announced, feeling a surge of emotion at the thought of seeing Earth again. Coordinates place us just beyond the orbit of Mars. The view screen cleared, revealing the star-speckled blackness of normal space. In the distance, Earth gleamed like a blue-green jewel against the void. "It's beautiful," Lyra whispered, leaning forward to stare at the screen. "So much water." "Home sweet home," Emily said, then frowned as alerts began flashing across her console. "We've been detected. Earth Defense Fleet vessels are moving to intercept." "Expected," Seraphine said calmly. "Open a channel." Emily's fingers danced across the interface, establishing communication with the approaching ships. A stern human face appeared on the screen. A middle-aged man with close-cropped gray hair and the insignia of an Earth Defense Fleet admiral on his uniform. "Unidentified vessel. This is Admiral Chun of the EDF. You have entered restricted space with an unknown ship of non-human design. Identify yourself immediately or be fired upon." Emily leaned forward, ensuring she was visible in the transmission. "Admiral Chun, I'm Emily Parker, former Interstellar Resources engineer and current Resistance operative. I'm aboard the Star Song with representatives of a species seeking alliance with Earth against the Azurian Empire." The Admiral's eyes widened slightly at the sight of her. "Parker? The saboteur? You're listed as captured or killed in action." "The reports of my death were greatly exaggerated," Emily replied with a slight smile. "Request permission to approach Earth and meet with the Defense Council. I have information critical to humanity's survival." Chen's expression remained skeptical. "And these representatives you mentioned?" Emily hesitated, then gestured for Seraphine to move into view. The massive dragon's head appeared beside her in the transmission field, golden eyes gleaming with intelligence. "By all the stars," Chen whispered, composure momentarily shattered. "This is Seraphine," Emily introduced, "first guardian of the Draconis species and my ally. The Azurian Empire has been lying about dragons for millennia. They're not animals. They're a sentient species with technology far beyond ours or the Azurians." The Admiral stared at Seraphine, then at Emily, then back at Seraphine. Finally, he seemed to collect himself. "Maintain your position. I need to consult with the Council." The transmission cut, leaving them in tense silence. "Well," Emily said, "that went better than expected." "He did not immediately order his ships to fire upon us," Lyra observed. "By Imperial standards, that is indeed a warm welcome." They waited for nearly an hour before Admiral Chen contacted them again. This time, his expression was solemn but less hostile. "The Defense Council has granted you temporary landing clearance at the Lunar Base Alpha. You will be met by a security detail and escorted to a containment facility until your story can be verified." "Containment facility?" Emily repeated with a frown. "We're not here as prisoners, Admiral." "Then consider it protective custody," Chen replied firmly. "An unknown ship carrying dragons appears in our system immediately after reports that you were captured by the Empire. Forgive us for being cautious, Parker." Emily exchanged glances with Seraphine, who sent a thought directly to her mind. "Accept their terms. We can demonstrate our good faith once we are face to face." "Very well," Emily said to the Admiral. "We accept your conditions. Transmitting approach vector now." The journey to the lunar base was tense, with EDF ships flanking them on all sides. Emily guided the Star Song with precision, following the exact course they had been assigned. As they approached the massive lunar installation, a sprawling complex of domes and towers built into the moon's surface, she felt a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. "They're scanning us," she reported, noting the sensor sweeps washing over the ship, "trying to determine our capabilities in numbers." "Let them," Seraphine replied. "We have nothing to hide." The Star Song settled onto a designated landing pad large enough to accommodate its substantial size. Through the view screen, Emily could see heavily armed security teams taking position around the ship, their weapons trained on the hull. "Not exactly the homecoming I imagined," she muttered. "What did you expect?" Lyra asked. Flowers and a parade? Emily smiled despite herself. Point taken. Let's go meet the welcoming committee. She instructed the ship to extend its boarding ramp, and the small group made their way to the exit. Emily went first, hands raised to show she carried no weapons. Behind her came Lyra, then Seraphine and the other 4 dragons moving in single file to fit through the ship's corridors. When Emily emerged onto the landing pad, the security teams visibly tensed, weapons tracking her movement. But it was the appearance of Seraphine that caused real alarm. Shouts of warning erupted as the massive dragon's head emerged from the ship. Hold your fire, Emily called out, placing herself between the security teams and Seraphine. They are allies, not threats. A woman in an EDF colonel's uniform stepped forward, her hand resting on a sidearm. Emily Parker? I'm Colonel Rivera. Please instruct your companions to remain where they are while we secure the area. Colonel, with all due respect, we don't have time for this, Emily replied. The Azurian Empire knows we've come to Earth. They'll be following us with everything they have. Rivera's expression hardened. All the more reason for us to take proper security precautions. Now, please comply, or we will be forced to take action. Before Emily could argue further, Seraphine sent a calming thought through their link. Patience, Emily. Trust must be earned. Reluctantly, Emily nodded to the colonel. We'll comply, but I need to speak with the Defense Council immediately. That's been arranged, Rivera confirmed. You'll be debriefed, and if your information checks out, you'll address the council directly. What followed was hours of intense questioning in separate rooms. Emily was interviewed by military intelligence officers who demanded to know every detail of her capture, escape, and the revelations about the dragons. Meanwhile, Seraphine and the other dragons were kept in a reinforced hangar designed to contain potentially hostile alien life forms. Lyra, as an Azurian defector, received particularly harsh scrutiny. Her knowledge of Imperial defense systems and her possession of the control key made her both incredibly valuable and deeply suspect. Finally, after nearly 6 hours of debriefing, Emily was escorted to a conference room where Admiral Chun waited alongside several high-ranking military and civilian officials. Your story has been partially corroborated by our intelligence assets within the Empire, Chun said without preamble. There was indeed a major security incident at the Imperial Palace 3 days ago, and the Emperor has mobilized his fleet in an unprecedented show of force. Then you believe me? Emily asked. Let's say we're willing to listen further. A silver-haired woman in civilian clothes replied. I'm Director Harrison of Earth Intelligence. We've analyzed the technology you brought with you, particularly that neural interface device. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. That's just the beginning, Emily said earnestly. The Star Song contains technology that could revolutionize our defenses against the Empire. But more importantly, the dragons represent potential allies with capabilities far beyond our own. About these dragons, a military general interjected skeptically. You expect us to believe they've been hiding their intelligence from the Azurians for thousands of years? That they recognize something special in your DNA? I don't expect you to believe it based on my word alone, Emily replied. That's why I request that you meet with Seraphine directly. The neural interface allows direct communication. You can judge for yourselves. The officials exchanged glances, silent communications passing between them. Very well, Director Harrison finally said. We'll arrange a meeting in a secure facility. But I warn you, Parker, if this is some kind of Azurian trap, you won't live to regret it. The meeting took place in a large chamber originally designed for diplomatic encounters with alien species. Seraphine was allowed to enter first, her massive form filling much of the available space. When the Earth officials entered, Emily could see them struggling to maintain their composure in the dragon's presence. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Seraphine's thought voice projected through a modified version of the neural interface that the Earth scientists had adapted for multiple users. I understand your caution. Admiral Chin stepped forward, visibly steeling himself. We're told you represent a species that once had an alliance with humanity. What proof can you offer of this claim? In response, Seraphine projected a series of images directly into the minds of everyone present. Ancient cities where humans and dragons lived side by side, spacecraft with crews of both species, battles fought together against a common enemy. These are not mere images, Seraphine explained as the officials gasped in shock. They are genetic memories, passed down through generations of guardians. What you see is our shared history. Impossible, whispered the general, but his tone lacked conviction. I believe her, Director Harrison said quietly. The emotional resonance in these images is too complex to be fabricated. What followed was an intense exchange of information. Seraphine shared details of the ancient alliance, the war with the early Azurians, and the decision to separate and hide until the time was right for reunion. In return, the Earth officials described humanity's current situation, their precarious position in the galactic community, constantly under threat from the expanding Azurian Empire. The Emperor fears this reunion above all else, Seraphine told them. It is why he has kept my kind as supposed beasts, trophies to display his dominance while ensuring we could never reconnect with humans. And now that you have, he's coming here with everything he's got, Admiral Chun concluded grimly. Yes, Seraphine confirmed. But we have advantages he does not expect. The Star Song is but one ship from our ancient fleet. There are others, hidden throughout Azurian space, guarded by my kin. With the control key Lyra brought us, we can send the activation signal to awaken them all. The implications sank in slowly. Director Harrison was the first to speak. You're talking about igniting a revolution across the entire empire. Precisely, Emily said, stepping forward. The dragons have been patient for thousands of years, building their strength in secret. With humanity as allies once more, we can finally strike back. The discussions continued for hours, eventually expanding to include Lyra and military strategists from Earth's defense forces. Plans were formed, contingencies discussed, and a tentative alliance forged between species who had once been partners long ago. 3 days later, Emily stood on the observation deck of Lunar Base Alpha, watching as ships from Earth's defense fleet took up formation around the Star Song. In the days since their arrival, more humans with the Kindrith genetic marker had been identified and paired with dragons from Seraphine's group, creating additional neural link teams to operate recovered Draconis technology. Impressive progress in such a short time, Lyra commented, joining Emily at the viewport. The Azurian's blue skin contrasted sharply with the stark white of the Earth uniform she'd been given. Humans are adaptable, Emily replied, especially when facing extinction. The Emperor underestimated you, Lyra said. He underestimated all of you, humans and dragons alike. Speaking of the Emperor, Emily began, but was interrupted by alarms blaring throughout the base. Red emergency lights flashed along the corridors as Admiral Chen's voice came over the comm system. All personnel to battle stations. Multiple fold space ruptures detected at the edge of the system. Imperial fleet incoming. Emily and Lyra rushed to the command center, arriving just as the main tactical display updated to show dozens of Azurian warships emerging from fold space. That's a full battle group, Lyra said, her voice tight with tension. The Emperor has committed a significant portion of his fleet. Admiral Chun turned to them, his expression grim. We're outgunned and outnumbered. Even with the Star Song, we can't match that kind of firepower. We don't have to, Emily replied. We just need to hold them off long enough to broadcast the activation signal. Seraphine's thoughts reached them through the neural link. The Star Song is ready. We should move now, before they can establish a blockade. The plan they had formulated was daring to the point of recklessness. Emily and Seraphine would take the Star Song directly toward the Imperial fleet, breaking through their lines just long enough to broadcast the activation signal to dormant dragon enclaves throughout Azurian space. Meanwhile, Earth's defense fleet would engage in delaying tactics, drawing as much Imperial attention as possible. This is suicide, Chen protested as Emily prepared to return to the Star Song. You'll be destroyed before you can get close enough. The Starsong's shields are stronger than anything in the Imperial arsenal, Emily reminded him. And they won't expect us to attack directly. It's the last thing a rational opponent would do. Which is precisely why it might work, Lyra added. The Emperor thinks in terms of overwhelming force. Subtlety is not his strength. Chen looked unconvinced but nodded reluctantly. We'll give you as much cover as we can. Good luck, Parker. 20 minutes later, the Starsong launched from the lunar surface, accelerating rapidly toward the approaching Imperial fleet. From the bridge, Emily could see Earth ships moving into defensive formations, preparing to engage the much larger enemy force. Comms are picking up Imperial transmissions, reported one of the dragons, who had taken responsibility for monitoring communications. They're demanding our immediate surrender and the return of their property, by which they mean us. Send no response, Emily instructed. Let them think we're running scared. The Starsong raced toward the edge of the system, as if attempting to escape via fold space. The Imperial fleet adjusted course to intercept, exactly as Emily had hoped. They're taking the bait, she reported to Seraphine, who was monitoring the tactical display. They think we're trying to flee. The Emperor is with them, Seraphine said suddenly, her mental voice tight with surprise. I can sense his presence on the lead dreadnought. Emily's heart raced. He came personally? That's unexpected. Perhaps not, Lyra interjected. This is a matter of personal humiliation for him now. The dragons were his symbol of power, and you took them from him. As the distance closed between the Starsong and the Imperial fleet, energy weapons began to fire. Brilliant lances of destructive force that the ancient ship's shields deflected with surprising ease. Shields holding at 92%, Emily reported. Their weapons are powerful, but they're not calibrated for our defensive systems. Behind them, Earth's fleet engaged the trailing elements of the Imperial Armada, drawing away some of the firepower directed at the Starsong. Explosions blossomed in the void as ships from both sides took damage. We're approaching optimal broadcast range, Seraphine announced, preparing the activation signal. The ship shuddered as a particularly powerful blast struck their shields, momentarily causing the lights to flicker. Shield integrity dropping to 78%. Emily called out. They're concentrating their fire. Evasive maneuvers, Seraphine instructed. We need just a few more minutes. Emily's hands flew across the control interface, guiding the Starsong through increasingly complex patterns to avoid the worst of the enemy fire. The neural link allowed her to anticipate Seraphine's suggestions before they were even fully formed, creating a perfect synergy between pilot and navigator. On the tactical display, they could see a massive Imperial dreadnought moving to cut off their path, a behemoth of crystalline armor and weapon emplacements. The Emperor's flagship, Lyra, identified. The Eternal Dominion. A transmission cut through their comms, overriding their security protocols. Emperor Vexus's face appeared on the screen, his silver eyes blazing with fury. Emily Parker, he said, his melodious voice now harsh with rage. Return what you have stolen, and I may yet show mercy to your pitiful planet. Emily straightened in her chair, meeting his gaze directly. I've stolen nothing, Emperor. I simply helped reunite old friends. Vexus's expression contorted. You have no concept of what forces you're meddling with, human. Those creatures are the property of the Imperial throne, weapons to be wielded by those with the divine right to rule. They were never weapons, Emily replied calmly, and they were certainly never yours. She cut the transmission with a gesture, returning her focus to piloting. Activation signal ready, Seraphine announced. We need clear transmission space. The signal must reach across the Empire without interference. Emily studied the tactical situation. They were surrounded on three sides by Imperial vessels, with the massive dreadnought directly ahead. Their only option was to break through somehow. I have an idea, she said, a plan forming in her mind. But it's risky. Share it, Seraphine prompted. Through the neural link, Emily conveyed her strategy. A direct assault on the Emperor's flagship, using the Starsong's superior maneuverability to slip past its defenses and emerge on the other side. where they would have clear space to broadcast the signal. Audacious, Seraphine commented, approval coloring her thoughts. The Emperor will not expect us to target him directly. Exactly, Emily agreed. He thinks we're running from him. Let's show him how wrong he is. She altered course, the Star Song responding instantly to her commands. The ship arrowed directly toward the Imperial dreadnought, accelerating to attack speed. Confusion rippled through the Imperial fleet as they registered the sudden change in tactics. Their formation began to shift, but too slowly to counter the Star Song's unexpected charge. Weapons charged, reported one of the dragons. The Star Song's offensive capabilities had remained dormant until now, but as they activated, Emily felt the ship vibrating with contained power. Target their main weapon emplacements only, she instructed. We're not trying to destroy them, just punch through. The Star Song opened fire, not with the energy beams favored by modern vessels, but with pulses of concentrated gravitational force that distorted space itself around their targets. The dreadnought's forward weapons crumpled as if crushed by invisible hands, creating a temporary blind spot in its defenses. Full power to forward shields, Emily commanded as they hurtled toward the gap they had created. Brace for impact. The Star Song plunged through the opening, scraping against the dreadnought's crystalline hull. Alarms blared as their shields flared against the contact, energy cascading across the view screen in blinding patterns. For a terrifying moment, Emily thought they might not make it through. Then suddenly they were clear, emerging on the far side of the Imperial formation with open space before them. Shields at 41%, she reported, checking the damage readouts. But we made it. Broadcast the signal now. Seraphine activated the transmission sequence, channeling power from the ship's other systems to strengthen the broadcast. The control key that Lyra had stolen began to glow, interfacing with the Star Song's communications array. Signal transmitting on all frequencies, Seraphine announced. Encryption protocols active. The Imperials cannot block or intercept the content. On the tactical display, they watched as the Imperial fleet scrambled to reorient themselves, confusion evident in their disorganized movements. The Emperor's dreadnought was turning ponderously, trying to bring its remaining weapons to bear on the Star Song. Signal at 30% propagation, Seraphine reported. We need to maintain position for full coverage. How much longer? Emily asked, eyeing the approaching Imperial ships with concern. 3 minutes for complete transmission. Anything less risks losing some of the enclaves. Emily nodded grimly. Then we hold position. All power to shields. The Imperial fleet recovered from their surprise and began a coordinated attack, converging on the Star Song from multiple vectors. Energy beams lashed out, hammering against the ancient ship's weakening shields. Shields at 29%, Emily reported as another impact rocked the bridge. 21%. We can't take much more of this. Signal at 62% propagation, Seraphine responded. Just a little longer. The view screen showed Earth's fleet engaging the Imperial rearguard, trying desperately to draw attention away from the Star Song. But they were outmatched and taking heavy losses. Shields at 15%, Emily announced, her voice tight with tension. 10%. Structural integrity compromised on decks 3 through 7. Signal at 89% propagation, Seraphine countered. Almost there. The Emperor's dreadnought had completed its turn and was bearing down on them, its remaining weapons charging for what would surely be a devastating blow. Shields failing, Emily reported as warning signals flashed across her console. We can't. She was interrupted by a sudden change on the tactical display. New signals were appearing throughout the Imperial fleet, ships activating from within. It's working, Lyra exclaimed. The dormant dragons aboard the Imperial vessels are responding to the signal. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Imperial ships began to lose power, their systems overridden from within. Others fired upon their own allies, their weapons controlled by dragons who had hidden among their crews for generations. Signal transmission complete, Seraphine announced with satisfaction. The awakening has begun. On the view screen, They watched in amazement as the Emperor's dreadnought itself began to list to one side, its engines sputtering. Explosions blossomed along its flanks as internal systems failed catastrophically. There were dragons on the Imperial flagship? Emily asked, stunned. Of course, Seraphine replied. We're better to hide than in plain sight, at the very heart of power. The Imperial fleet was in chaos now, their coordinated attack collapsing into disarray as ship after ship fell under dragon control or was disabled by its suddenly rebellious systems. We should rejoin the Earth fleet, Emily suggested, already plotting a course. They've taken heavy damage. Before they could move, a priority transmission cut through their communications. Admiral Chun, his face grim but triumphant. Parker, are you seeing this? The Imperial fleet is tearing itself apart. It's the activation signal, Emily explained quickly. Dragons hidden throughout the Imperial fleet are taking control of the ships they've been secretly monitoring for centuries. Then it worked, Chun said, relief evident in his voice. But we've still got problems. Our fleet is at less than 60% operational capacity, and we're detecting a second wave of Imperial reinforcements entering the system. Where? Emily demanded, checking the tactical display. Coming in from the opposite vector. They must have split their forces to trap us in a pincer movement. Emily exchanged a glance with Seraphine. The signal hasn't reached them yet. No, the dragon agreed. They were too far out when we broadcast. We need to hold them off until the dragons aboard their ships can respond. Can the Starsong still fight? Chun asked. Emily checked the ship's systems. Barely. Shields are almost gone, and we've got structural damage throughout the hull. Then fall back to the lunar defense perimeter, Chun ordered. We'll form a new defensive line there. As the battered Earth fleet and the Starsong regrouped near the moon, the first Imperial wave continued to disintegrate, their formation now completely shattered as dragon-controlled ships turned against those still under Imperial command. The Emperor's dreadnought, however, was slowly regaining control, its systems stabilizing as internal battles raged between loyal crew and awakened dragons. The Emperor must have some kind of contingency against dragon rebellion, Lyra observed, watching the dreadnought's recovery. Perhaps special security forces trained to detect and neutralize dragons. It won't save him, Seraphine said confidently. The balance has shifted too far. The second Imperial wave appeared at the edge of the system, advancing in perfect formation, 50 warships arrayed in attack posture, untouched by the chaos affecting the first wave. They're launching fighters, reported an Earth defense officer over the comm link. Hundreds of them, on an attack vector toward the lunar base. Intercept them, Chun ordered. All available ships to defensive positions. Emily studied the tactical situation, a growing sense of dread building within her. The Earth fleet was too damaged, too depleted to repel this fresh assault. Even with the help of the dragon-controlled Imperial ships from the first wave, they were outmatched. We need more time, she said to Seraphine. The activation signal hasn't reached all of those ships yet. There may be another option, the dragon replied thoughtfully. The Starsong carries one weapon we have not yet deployed, the gravitational fold. What does it do? Emily asked. It creates a localized fold in space-time, temporarily removing anything within its radius from normal space. It was designed as a defensive measure, not an attack. How large an area can it affect? At full power? Perhaps a sphere 3 kilometers in diameter. Emily's eyes widened as she realized the implications. Not large enough for the entire fleet, but perfect for their command ships. My thoughts exactly, Seraphine agreed. If we can disrupt their command structure, it will buy time for the activation signal to reach the dragons aboard those vessels. But the Starsong's power systems are already strained, Emily pointed out. Activating something like that could drain us completely. A necessary risk, Seraphine replied. The alternative is defeat. Emily relayed their plan to Admiral Chun, who reluctantly agreed. If it gives us a fighting chance, do it. But be warned, you'll be exposing yourselves to concentrated fire. With your shields in their current state, that's a suicide mission. Not if we're fast enough, Emily countered. We just need one clear shot at their command group. The Starsong broke away from the defensive line, accelerating toward the advancing Imperial fleet. What shields remained were focused forward, creating a wedge that might allow them to penetrate deep enough to deploy their weapon. Imperial fighters swarmed toward them, energy weapons blazing. Most impacts were absorbed by the shields, but some found their way through, scarring the ancient hull. Power to the gravitational fold generator, Emily instructed, her hands dancing across the control interface. Divert everything except life support and minimal propulsion. Charging, Seraphine confirmed. 60% and rising. The Starsong plunged into the midst of the Imperial formation, taking fire from all sides now. Warning signals flashed across Emily's console as systems began to fail throughout the ship. Hull breach on Deck 5, reported one of the dragons. Emergency containment holding. 80% charge, Seraphine announced. Target locked on their command cluster. Through the view screen, Emily could see the heart of the Imperial formation. 3 large command vessels surrounded by escort ships, coordinating the attack. If they could disrupt that nexus, the entire assault might falter. Almost there, she muttered, making minute adjustments to their course. Just a little closer. A massive impact rocked the ship, throwing Emily against her restraints. Half the bridge displays went dark, emergency lighting activating as primary power fluctuated. Direct hit to our propulsion system, one of the dragons reported urgently. We're losing maneuverability. Gravitational fold at 92% charge, Seraphine reported. We need to deploy now or risk losing the weapon entirely. Do it, Emily commanded. Full discharge on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. The Starsong shuddered as energy surged through its systems. From the bow of the ancient vessel, a pulse of distorted space erupted. Not a beam or explosion, but a rippling wave of bent reality that expanded outward in a perfect sphere. When it reached the Imperial command ships, they simply vanished, not destroyed, but removed from normal space-time, caught in a bubble of folded reality that shimmered like heat haze against the backdrop of stars. Gravitational fold deployed successfully, Seraphine announced. Command vessels will be displaced for approximately 8 minutes. That's our window, Emily said, already turning the damaged Starsong back toward the Earth fleet. Without central coordination, their attack will lose coherence. As predicted, the Imperial formation began to falter. Ships continued to advance, but their once perfect coordination dissolved into individual actions without the command structure to guide them. And then, just as Emily had hoped, ships within the second wave began to turn against each other. The activation signal had reached the hidden dragons aboard those vessels. Confusion turned to chaos as the Imperial fleet found enemies within their own ranks. It's working, Lyra exclaimed. The dragons are taking control. The Starsong limped back toward the lunar base, trailing debris and venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. They were nearly clear of the fighting when a single Imperial cruiser broke away from the main force, accelerating on an intercept course. We have a pursuer, Emily reported, checking the tactical display. Moving too fast for a standard cruiser. The image on the view screen magnified, revealing the vessel's identity. It was not a cruiser but a modified royal yacht, smaller than a warship but heavily armed and incredibly fast. The Emperor, Seraphine said grimly. He's abandoned his flagship. The yacht gained rapidly, its weapons systems charging for a killing blow against the crippled Starsong. Evasive maneuvers, Emily ordered, but the ship responded sluggishly, its damaged propulsion systems struggling to comply. Incoming transmission, announced one of the dragons. Emperor Vexus's face appeared on the screen, his perfect features contorted with fury. Gone was the composed ruler who had sentenced Emily to death. In his place was a creature of pure rage. You have cost me my empire, human, he snarled. But you will not live to see your victory. The yacht fired, energy beams slicing through space toward the Starsong. With its shields nearly depleted, the ancient vessel could not hope to withstand a direct hit. Brace for impact, Emily shouted. But the expected blow never came. Instead, a massive shadow fell across the view screen as another ship interposed itself between the Star Song and the Emperor's yacht. One of the dragon-controlled Imperial warships, deliberately taking the hit meant for them. The warship's shields flared and failed under the concentrated barrage, but it had given the Star Song precious seconds. More dragon-controlled vessels converged on the Emperor's position, hemming in the royal yacht from all sides. "No!" Vexus howled, his voice cracking with desperation. "I am your Emperor. You will obey me." "Not anymore," Seraphine replied, broadcasting her thoughts directly to the Emperor's ship. "Your reign ends today." The dragon-controlled ships opened fire simultaneously, their combined firepower overwhelming the yacht's defenses. The small vessel erupted in a blinding flash, fragments scattering across the void. "The Emperor?" Emily asked quietly. "Gone," Seraphine confirmed, along with his delusions of divinity. Across the system, the remaining loyal Imperial ships began to power down or retreat, their will to fight evaporating with the death of their ruler. The second wave, now largely under dragon control, ceased hostilities entirely. Admiral Chen's voice came over the comm system, heavy with relief and disbelief. "Parker, please confirm, did we just win?" Emily looked at Seraphine, then at Lyra, then at the tactical display showing Imperial ships in full retreat. "Yes, Admiral. I believe we did." The aftermath of the battle brought a flurry of diplomatic activity. Dragons from across the former Azurian Empire converged on Earth, emerging from hidden enclaves or arriving aboard the ships they had helped liberate. The ancient alliance between humans and dragons was formally re-established in a ceremony attended by representatives of both species. Emily, standing beside Seraphine in the Grand Hall of the Earth Defense Council, watched as human and dragon delegates signed the new treaty. The neural interfaces, now mass-produced using recovered Draconis technology, allowed for direct communication between the species, eliminating the misunderstandings that had plagued interspecies relations for millennia. "I still can't believe how quickly everything changed," Emily said to Seraphine through their private link. "A month ago, I was a prisoner awaiting execution. Now I'm watching the birth of a new interstellar alliance. Time is relative when you measure your existence in thousands of years," Seraphine replied with amusement. "For my kind, this is but the next chapter in a very long story." "What happens next?" Emily asked. "The Azurian Empire controlled half the known galaxy. There will be a power vacuum, which is why the Alliance must fill it," Lyra interjected, joining their conversation. The Azurian noble had become Earth's primary advisor on imperial affairs, her knowledge proving invaluable during the transition. Already, worlds that chafed under imperial rule are pledging themselves to the new alliance. And those that don't, Emily pressed. "They will be given a choice," Seraphine assured her. "Freedom to join or remain independent, without coercion. We will not repeat the mistakes of the Azurians." The ceremony concluded with the unveiling of a new emblem for the Alliance, a dragon and human hand in hand against a field of stars, symbolizing the renewed partnership between the species. As the delegates dispersed, Admiral Chen approached their small group. "The Defense Council has approved your proposal, Parker. The Draconis Exploration Initiative is officially sanctioned." Emily smiled broadly. "Thank you, Admiral. When can we begin?" "As soon as the Star Song's repairs are complete," he replied. "Though I still think you're crazy to want to go back out there so soon. There's an entire galaxy waiting to be rediscovered," Emily said, excitement coloring her voice. "Ancient outposts of the original Alliance, technologies we've only glimpsed, and who knows how many other species who might join us. Just try not to start any more interstellar revolutions," Chen said dryly. "At least not without warning us first." After he left, Seraphine turned her golden eyes to Emily. "Are you certain this is what you want? You could remain on Earth, help build the new alliance from here." "I'm certain," Emily replied without hesitation. "Besides, we make a good team, don't you think?" "Indeed we do," the dragon agreed, amusement rippling through their mental link. "Though I suspect the Emperor would disagree. if he were still alive to do so. Well, he did make one mistake, Emily said with a grin. Only one? Lyra asked skeptically. He thought I was just food for his dragons, Emily explained. Turns out I was their ticket home instead. Seraphine's mental laughter was warm and rich. A rather significant miscalculation on his part. The first of many, Lyra added. Though his final mistake was assuming dragons could ever truly be controlled. Emily gazed out the window at the stars visible above Earth's atmosphere. Somewhere out there, the remnants of the Imperial fleet were still retreating, spreading word of the revolution that had begun with one human woman and 5 dragons. So, she said, turning back to her friends, when do we leave? 6 months later, the fully repaired Starsong departed Earth orbit, its mission to explore the far reaches of the galaxy and strengthen the growing alliance. At its helm stood Emily Parker, once a simple mining engineer, now the commander of the first joint human-dragon expedition in over 5,000 years. As they prepared for their first fold-space jump, Emily looked around the bridge at her crew, humans and dragons working seamlessly together, united by technology and purpose. Course laid in for the Andromeda sector, reported her human navigator. All systems nominal. Fold space generator at full power, added one of the Dragon crew members. Ready to jump on your command. Emily settled into her captain's chair, Seraphine coiled comfortably beside her. Take us out, she ordered. Let's see what's waiting for us out there. The Starsong's engines hummed with power, and the stars before them stretched into lines of light as the ship slipped between the folds of reality, carrying the promise of a new era to the waiting galaxy. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.